Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio World. We are celebrating Earth Day all week long here on Rainier Avenue Radio World in collaboration with Front and Centered and the Social Justice Film Festival. It's Wednesday, midweek. Excited to be here. Been having a great time all week long. Start off the morning as we did at Monday, as we did on Tuesday, and again today by giving you an update about what's going to be taking place today. Joining me is Mr. Nick Jeffries, Outreach, is that the title?
Community Outreach Organizer.
Community Outreach for the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. Good to have you here, man.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, I got a lot to talk to you about. Specifically, this conversation is going to be regarding youth leading tomorrow for environmental justice, climate justice, and as we know, that is the key, obviously, to the future of how we're going to sustain or potentially crisis is the word that I'm hearing. So we're going to be talking about this today. A little bit later on, we've got the Global African Initiative, and I believe Rebecca is going to be leading that particular conversation. At 1 p.m., we've got On the Front Lines, Fighting Nuclear with Tara Bilalabo. 3 o'clock, Saving Our Forest, featuring Zephyr Elise and Julianne Gale of Mason County Climate Justice. And at 5 o'clock today, the Youth Radio Takeover. We're not going to edit them. Whatever they want to say is what they're going to say. We've got youth coming from all over the state. That's at 5 o'clock. If you'd like to, you can join us right here at the Columbia City Theater, 4916 Rainier Avenue South in Seattle, or you can catch it online. You can go to either one of these websites and get a link, either calltoconscience.world, calltoconscience.world, or frontandcentered.org, and you'll get a listing of everything that's taking place all week long. You'll even have some links that'll let you show you what's taking place and what's coming up next. So, wow, Nick, earlier just kind of a recap of what we've had here. We've seen some great films. We've had some awesome conversation. Yesterday, we featured indigenous perspectives. The day before that, we just talked about everything in general, and excited to have this conversation with you about youth leading this effort. Let's start with this. Give us some background information on yourself, a little background information on the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle.
So I came from being a middle school teacher. So youth empowerment and having youth lead their future and having youth be at the forefront in co-governance is really important to me, because they are the future and this is the world they will inherit. And I have a feeling that things are going to become amazing, and things are going to be amazing if we just allow the youth to lead and have agency over what they learn, what they do, the way they do things, and the different movements they want to partake in. And a little bit of backstory about the Urban League, more specifically the ACE department. I'm going to read this part because, we want to get it right. The Advocacy and Community Engagement Department empowers the collective by providing accessible educational opportunities for all backgrounds, ages, and education levels, to challenge systems, decision makers, and to prioritize co-governance with Black, Brown, and other underserved communities, and to create an environment of joy, happiness, and wellness for all.
Okay. So let's just jump right into this. Why are these issues of environmental justice and climate justice important to youth? Why should they be important to our youth today?
They're important to me, and they should be important to the youth, and they should really be important to everybody today, because these environmental justice issues aren't just issues of the birds, the bees, and the turtles. It's communities of color, it's indigenous communities, it's low-income communities, it's people all around this country that are going to face the ramifications of it. And eventually everybody's going to face the ramifications of it, because we have one world, we have one earth, we have one climate, and we have one thing to protect. And I think it's mad important that we really cherish that and really love that and really make sure that we're good stewards of this land, like the indigenous people have been in Washington for upwards of 1,500 years.
Yeah. Speaking of that, again, our Indigenous Perspective show. If you missed it, you'll hear about what he's talking about on that particular show. What is the energy, from your perspective, of youth today regarding environmental justice, climate justice? Is there an energy? Is there an awareness? Is there leadership in that regard?
There is leadership, and I think there is an awareness. And I think there's an awareness that something's wrong. There's an awareness that what's going on is not equitable. There's an awareness that we and many people have prioritized profits over people, and prioritized profits over our environment, and prioritized profits over life. And I think a lot of the younger generation are saying that, especially Gen Z. You know, me as a younger millennial really appreciates Gen Z because they've really been getting out there and really been leading the charge against different corruption that has like negatively impacted the environment. And I think it's really important that those of us who can and have the privilege to help uplift them, help work with them, help provide what they need to have a positive kind of like activism and positive like impact on society.
Now, what are some of the specific ways that youth are leading in this effort? When we talk about environmental justice, climate change, there's a wide swath of things that this impacts and affects. You have rural issues to some, you have some more urban issues that affect communities differently. But again, you have extreme weather conditions. We could talk about, and we did yesterday with Public Health Officer Jeffrey Duchin. He said that climate change is a public health crisis as well. What are some of the issues, from your knowledge, that youth should be concerned about, or are at this time leading the charge on, based off of where they come from, and again, this world that will be left behind for them?
It's interesting because we've seen like you said, rural communities and urban communities, right? They're facing a plethora of issues on their own, but a lot of times because of different ways of divisiveness, these two different communities don't see each other's fight as intersecting. And kind of like what I try and prioritize in all my activism and all the activities and education I partake in is the understanding of intersectionality. And some of the big issues youth are facing in urban areas, specifically Black, brown, and low-income youth, is gentrification and displacement, and being pushed out, and having to deal with different fuel emissions, and having to deal with different issues around, for example, lack of speed bumps or speed monitoring in these communities, where people are going 45 miles per hour down a neighborhood road. Mm-hmm. People in rural communities, as we've seen in Palestine, Ohio, they're dealing with the train crash that spilled out toxic waste that may pollute the land for who knows how long. And I think a lot of these issues that are intersecting, it's important that we're able to have these youth from rural communities and youth from urban communities start to come together and have conversations about that. And that's what I've been seeing, especially on forums like TikTok, Instagram, stuff like that, where you're seeing people really go to these politicians and really go to these state capitals and really go to these movements and really demand change. And I really wholeheartedly admire them for that.
All right, wake up. We're here again. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. We're getting everything started today. My guest is Nick Jeffries, Community Outreach from the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. We're getting a perspective, a youth perspective in this from Nick about the energy of youth behind leading the effort of environmental justice and climate justice. I just asked you, Nick, what some of those things were. You said gentrification and displacement. Can you connect the dots so that folks say gentrification and displacement, how is that environmental justice?
For example, when you start to displace a large group of people, it really decomposes like the heart and the soul of the neighborhood, because a lot of times when you look at neighborhoods like the CD, when you look at neighborhoods like Hilltop Tacoma, when you look at places like Rainier Beach, people have been there stewarding that community, and people have been there nurturing that community, and people have been there taking care of that community for generations. And these populations moving in, aka the gentrifiers, aren't taking care of the land in the same way. There's large development projects going up. You know, there's different pollutants coming from the construction work. There's just overall the population shift.
You know, talk a little bit of, well, this is one of the issues that I'm aware of. I just see a lot of interest in young people in this thing that we call food deserts as well.
Come on. Well, I mean, instead of calling it a food desert, let's call it what it is. It's a food apartheid. Mm-hmm. And that meaning low-income Black and brown communities, they're not having access to fresh food. They're not having access to organic food. They're not having access to sustainable means. I mean, you'll find maybe you'll find a liquor store on the corner, maybe a 7-Eleven, but until you have more like gentrifying populations moving in, when you have Whole Foods, when you have places like PCC, when you have these food options move in, the community who was originally there is gone already. And then they're moved to another food apartheid because it's done on purpose. It doesn't just happen that in Black and brown communities there's liquor stores. It doesn't just happen that there's only 7-Elevens. It's by design, by traditional redlining, by segregation, by different housing covenants. Like in Seattle, even down by Lake Washington, there's even houses that in the deed, they said that they made a note that they did not want Black people to live there. They did not want brown people to live there.
Again, just kind of along those same lines, one of the conversations that we were having about food when talking with our indigenous partners was the earth. You know, for them, protect the earth because this is where food grows.
Come on.
This is where the animals eat their food that they ingest. And so is there a connection being made for youth between what you're calling food apartheid? Food does come from a grocery store. But before it gets to the grocery store, there are some issues regarding environmental justice as well, with how we're treating the land, what's happening to the food, what kind of contaminants are in the food, pesticides are in the food. Is there a connection for youth that bridge that gap between, again, some of the things that affect rurally farmers and urban, the food apartheid that you're talking about?
Yes, pesticides, like you said, pesticides. Like pesticides, different pollutants that are becoming ingested by the animals. There's different pollutants and different preservatives that are negatively affecting the fruit and vegetables that are being sold to the stores. And the higher, more organic fruit is being sent to higher income neighborhoods. And also a huge part that people don't talk about is farm workers' rights and the way in which the people actually growing the food are treated. Not the owner of the farm. The people who are growing the food are being mistreated. The people who are growing the food are being underpaid. They're being underserved when they're the ones feeding the rest of us and making sure that these farms can continue running. So I think a big part of like intersecting these two groups is understanding that a big part of food justice is anti-racist work.
Wow. Again, my guest, Nick Jeffries, we're talking about youth leading the effort that we're talking about this entire week here, Monday through Friday. So today being Wednesday, we're at you again, getting you to wake up because we've got a lot coming at you later on again today. I'm going to go over some of the things that we've got coming up and give them my little notes here so I can get it right too. Environmental justice across border. Oh, wait a minute. That was yesterday. That was that was yesterday. We had environmental justice across borders. Isabel led a conversation and talked with some folks from different countries about what's going on there. And then we had the film Necessity, Climate Justice, and the Thin Green Line. Sam Hampton was here to introduce that film. And again, today I was mentioning to you that what's going to come up after this at 11:30, the Global African Initiative featuring Yolanda Sin of the Global African Community, Rebecca of Executive Director of Front and Centered will be hosting that conversation. Then also at 1 p.m., Fighting Nuclear with Tara Villalbo. Now, this is virtual only and audio only, so you can, those of you who are listening right now, you'll be able to continue to do it the same way. For those of you who are watching us right now, you can go to our online platform. You can just go to Rainier Avenue Radio.world and click on listen, and then you can hear that. Then we'll be back with you visually again for Saving Our Forests. And you can go to the website, calltoconscience.world, find out that information, or frontandcentered.org. And then at 5 p.m., our special kickoff of the Youth Radio Takeover. Why is it important to make sure that youth voices are included in these conversations, and maybe even more than just included, leading this effort?
It's important because it's their world. They're inheriting it. And not only are they inheriting it, but for so long, we've seen where gerontocracy in this country has gotten us. We've seen where gerontocracy in our communities and in our leadership and in our political figures has gotten us. And I think when one of my favorite terms my dad has always told me, when in doubt, go a different route, right? So it's time to uplift the youth. It's time to have the youth co-govern. It's time to have the youth be the ones to champion this. And it's time for us, those of us who are not youth anymore, it's time for us to really step back and support, step back and help uplift, step back and help push forward these young emerging leaders.
And what with the Urban League? I know that Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle is very vested in this particular. What are some of the things that you're doing over there with youth leading? I know I know Naire was recently at a conference in Washington, D.C. Just talk a little bit about some of those efforts and what's going on in that direction.
So one of our most recent things is we took a group of students from Rainier Beach High School to the Capitol to speak with different senators and representatives from their area. And one thing that was really important about that was that we gave the youth the opportunity to ask questions. We gave the youth the opportunity to really get in there and ask these politicians what they need from them, and ask them what they can do for them, and really made their voice heard, and not just made their voice heard in a curated way where it's like, oh yeah, here's questions you should ask. No, we allowed them to unfeatheredly ask questions and really get nitty-gritty with their experience at the school and their experience in the community and their fears for the community. And I think, and it was such an amazing opportunity to sit, because many times students in the South End of Seattle politically are left out. I mean, people in general in South Seattle are politically left out.
And if you can you share some of the, or do you aware of some of the experiences that they had that were either transformational or created a deeper awareness to some of these issues that the students had? You guys had a chance to do any recap like that? Did you hear about some of the stories?
So we'll be doing a recap because the kids were on spring break last week.
Okay.
But we'll be doing a recap with them next week. But I think one thing, because I drove the van, y'all. I drove the van. It was fun. But,
from Seattle? From
Seattle to Olympia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so one reiterated theme that I noticed from the youth was that they never had a chance to talk to politicians before. They saw politicians as these kind of almost eye in the sky type figures that weren't accessible. But I kind of think this showed them that they're people too. It showed them that the politicians are people too.
Yeah.
It showed them that these people are there for them, and they should be working for them and working to support them. And it's also pushed a lot of them into wanting to seek more leadership opportunities, into wanting to participate in more programming where they get to enact change in their community. And kind of like an overarching fear of theirs, or not just fear, I shouldn't say fear, I should say kind of like concern of theirs is gentrification in their community, displacement in their communities. Because I think we don't give youth enough credit, especially high school kids, middle school kids. We don't give them enough credit for that. They know what's going on. They see it. They have to live it. They have to exist in it. You know, so one kind of thing I learned from that is listen to them. You know, really listen without offering like, oh, but. No, oh, but.
Yeah. I'm going to put a shameless plug in here since you said high school, because you can actually pre-register now to vote. And then when you're 18, you can vote. Traditionally, the statistics tell us that that particular age group does not vote. And that's historically. Why is it important to go to the next level, to not only advocate, not only create awareness, but then being involved in the political process is the way that I'll put it, which voting is a big part of that, because you vote in those elected officials who make those decisions. Why is that important, and how do you convey that message to teens, again, to connect those dots that along with your passion and your activism, you should vote, and you should pay attention to who you are voting for in your district, especially in your own communities. The presidential election, that's one thing. There's also the opportunity to make significant changes within your own community. Is that part of the dialogue that you're having in this effort to lead change?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is understanding why they don't vote and why they aren't civically engaged and why they don't participate in the political process. Because for many generations or even many years, but within these kids' life, they've been burned. They've been burned by politicians. They've been told that their vote doesn't count. They've been told that their voice isn't mattering, right? So they're like, oh, if it doesn't matter anyway, why participate? But I think a big part of civic engagement, and those of us who are in our communities educating about civic engagement, is really to get in there and show the kids like, hey, my bad, is by showing them that their vote counts, and not only that their vote counts, but that they can interact with these people. That even in some of these smaller districts, and even in these districts, 100 votes matters, 1,000 votes matters. Different, you know, and just kind of like, you have to unlearn in a weird way. You have to unlearn the kind of like, yeah, you kind of have to unlearn what you've been taught about voting traditionally. You know? Yeah.
Nick, this has been great. We're almost out of time here, and I want to give you the opportunity for final words. I've been throwing questions at you and firing questions at you. Whatever you'd like to share with our audience right now, the floor is yours. Again, this is Nick Jeffries, outreach specialist for the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, and we are talking about the youth perspective in leading this effort against environmental justice and climate change.
Okay, so for one thing I would like to do is I'd like to shout out the ACE team at the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle: Maya, Naire, Jude, Stefan, Camille, Jarvis, Zina, and Pavi. They make all this possible for me. They make all this possible for our community, and they really have helped me understand the importance of advocacy and community engagement. And we're having an event on Saturday, the 22nd. It's called Black Earth Day. Invite your friends, invite your cousin, invite your neighbor, bring your neighbor's cousin, because it's going to be a bash. It's going to be at Yes Farm, 727 Yesler Way. And we're really going to highlight the different efforts done by Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities to fight against climate change. And why it was important that we called it Black Earth Day is because when we think, what do you think about when you think of Earth Day?
I think about all of the things that are the first thing that comes in my mind are extreme things from climate change. Greenhouse gases and how that's changing it was 112 degrees in Seattle last year.
Come on.
But then I also personally just think about a lot of the impacts of urban disasters that happen. Water's tainted, communities are tainted, and one of the things that I've been getting a lot closer to here is the traditional, the indigenous perspective. About as they say, Ilalahi, I believe, Mother Earth. And that's what I think about it.
That's beautiful. Because I think when a lot of people think about Earth Day, I mean, even me as a kid, when I thought about Earth Day, we always remember, it was started in the 70s, right? Mm. And most of the time we don't really or it's been obfuscated that a lot of these movements for not only social justice, workers' rights, and environmental justice have been led by Black and Indigenous women. And it's really important, and that's what we really want to center with Black Earth Day. And we also want to highlight some of our amazing partners in the community. Shout out to Nurturing Roots. They're an amazing organization, but unfortunately they're being displaced from their space right now. And if you want to learn more about that, you can come to Black Earth Day, or you could look their website up on Google. I totally got nervous and forgot the link. But yeah, and we're also doing a lot of voter registration right now to get everybody ready for the election. And remember, your vote counts.
Nick, thanks for joining me here this morning and getting us off to a rousing start. I feel your passion and your energy, and I'm sure our audience does as well. Again, coming up at 11:30, we're still going to have our normal programming going on, but again at 11:30, make sure and tune right back in for the Global African Initiative at 1 o'clock. On the front lines at 3 o'clock, Saving Our Forests, and 5 p.m. today, the Youth Radio Takeover. Youth will be down here in the Columbia City Theater. You can come down as well and participate in this conversation. You can, unless you're an adult, but you can watch. And find out what the youth perspective is. Again, this is going to be unedited. It will be their thoughts, their conversations, their discussion. That's it. That's all the time I have. That's going to do it for the kid. It's me, Tony B, your host this morning. I will see you again tomorrow morning. Join us all day long right here on Rainier Avenue Radio .world as we celebrate Earth Deserves More Than a Day. Thanks for joining us.